Today, the healthcare sector has become patient-centric. We live in an age of information, and internet-based search engines allow patients to research condition-specific information, as well as seek answers to their questions in a flash of time. This information, however, lacks clarity, and information is scattered around different sites, blogs, and online forums. This online mess has created a loophole for medical researchers to come in and use only the most relevant, interesting, and medically accurate data and combine it with the user's needs. By combining their professional knowledge with the voice of patients, physicians, and pharmacists, medical researchers can easily develop the best, trusted solutions that can help patients recover or help patients manage living with a permanent medical condition.
I think we need to frame patient experience in the context of their lives rather than purely in the clinical journey that many of them are going on. And that means the things that they're interested in, their hobbies, their interests, whether they have a family or not, whether they have a job or not, those are the things that are relevant to them. If we can put healthcare in those terms, they're much more likely to engage in the treatments we might recommend and to help them live a more natural life, a better quality of life than they might otherwise.
The value of market research is ensuring that medical device manufacturers get the right devices to market. So they're spending millions of dollars on product development, and market research can help them get the right kind of devices into the hands of patients and healthcare professionals, making sure that they meet their needs in the best way possible.
Ideally, if you're developing a product, you want to incorporate, to understand, to feed in patient voice, patient insight before the developmental process has actually begun.
When you're looking at developing new products, market research can really help inform the usability or what needs need to be delivered for the product. So if you're looking at new product development, involving the different targets at each stage can help you deliver and develop a better product that really addresses people's key unmet needs.
And I think it's also important to give that frame of reference to the clinicians to help them understand what does motivate patients, and they might change that for future generations of patients and learn as we go. And I do think it's a share and learn relationship rather than this is what you need to do to become more healthy.
We support decision making in the industry throughout the drug life cycle, from the very early stages of development all the way through to the point at which the product loses its exclusivity.
We take the view from the market, we take the view from the competition, we take the view from the stakeholders, and the stakeholders in this case are physicians, patients, pharmacists, payers, and health technology bodies.
Qualitative research, qualitative insight is immensely powerful just to understand patient needs, patient experiences, patient requirements, and to help feed that into the very, very early stage of product. Product development and ethnographic research again can be very, very useful. Also focus groups can be really useful. We have a room full of patients sharing common experiences. There might be some differences there, but just understanding their lives, their experiences with current devices, maybe sharing their thoughts around the things they struggle with and encouraging them to think about what would need to change to help a device be elevated to a more superior, more usable status.
Well, I think one very practical area that can show the benefit of research is where in the patient journey is there genuine unmet need. And by that I mean what really matters to patients, but we're not able to provide them with the care and support. And that doesn't have to be clinical care, it could be more in the community and their social lives. We can shine a light on those gaps. And that can be, the benefit of that can be returned either in terms of improvements to against the standards of care, or innovative ideas, new ways to improve the quality of their lives.
Often you can usefully tap into patient experience and patient voice at the product concept stage. So it may be that you're presenting a concept that's in development to participants, and they can handle it, they might be able to use it, and at that stage you can really tap into their reactions to that product to understand what it is they like, what it is that maybe they think needs to be improved, tweaked, engineered slightly differently for them to be able to use it more effectively, for them to ultimately manage their condition more effectively.
Innovation in pharmaceutical and wider healthcare space is occurring fast, but as you know, the product cycle in pharmaceutical is far longer than any other industry. So product cycle can be anything from 7 to 12 years. So therefore, the fruition of the innovation takes along 7 to 12 years.
What's both challenging and driving market research is the technological revolution. Patients are more aware of the internet and have become more tech-savvy. The challenge is to stay in tune with the constantly evolving technology in social media. Within market research, there'll be different users, such as patients, carers, pharmacists, or doctors who'd like to see different outcomes. The researcher needs to meet the unmet needs.
One of the biggest challenges in marketing medical devices is that you've got 3 different target audiences. So you've got users, you've got prescribers, and you've got purchasers, each of which is going to have a different motivation, a different requirement, and you need to make sure that you're coming up with messages that resonate to those particular different audiences.
You need to make sure that you are delivering the right message to the right target. So for medical devices, compared to the consumer industry, it's much more difficult because you could have a number of different targets for your product. It could be the patient that's going to be using it themselves, maybe the caregiver of a patient, so if it's a product for a child. It could also be the HCP that's prescribing the product, they need to have them on board. And then also the purchasers, if it's a hospital product, having the purchasers buy in to actually want to bring that product onto their formulary.
Until recently, pharmaceutical companies have mainly focused on the needs of physicians, payers, health technology assessment bodies, and the regulators. And it's probably one of the few industries where you don't talk to the customer, the end customer, in this case is patients. So therefore it's very important to have the patient's view. And until now, the pharmaceutical companies have been asking the patient's view via physicians. So they used to ask physicians, what do patients need, think, or want?
At a more strategic level, there's real benefit to bringing the voice of the patient through into the sort of higher level of healthcare policy making. So by that I mean I'm talking about governments, agencies and think tanks, and also charities, and trying to make sure that voice of the patient comes alive for planning purposes, for structuring purposes, perhaps how we fund, enable access to healthcare, rather than always about healthcare on the ground.
Really understanding the patient perspective is key, because obviously if it's a device that works well, that they can handle and they can use, then their usage is going to be optimised, they'll be doing what they should as far as the healthcare practitioner's advice is concerned. And obviously on the other end, you have the healthcare practitioner, him or herself, and they obviously have their own perspective and their understanding of the device, but also they'll appreciate the patient's perspective.
You can ask different people the same question and get very different answers. When we think about patient centricity, you could talk to patients, you could talk to healthcare professionals, you could talk to payers. And in our experience, everyone gives a slightly different answer if you ask the same question. Now, how do you actually combine the different answers that you get? Well, if you look typically at the sort of answers that different groups will give you to the same question, it's usually along a different theme. So for a patient, there may be one issue about, let's say, for instance, administration. They would prefer a tablet that's small and easy to swallow. If you look at, say, administration from a healthcare professional's point of view, what he's going to answer and what his needs are may relate to the size of the tablet, but in a different way. That what they want to happen is for the patient to be compliant and to take their pill. So you've got a different objective, but ultimately you may have the same answer. So different answers leading to the same endpoint.
I think a partnership, for it to work, needs to be genuinely two-way. And in our experience over a number of years, I think qualitative research with patients is a bit too structured. Understandably, our clients want to control the brief, and even the overseeing bodies, the ethics committees and so on, whose job it is to to ensure that the research is correctly run, even they want to sort of see what the questions that you're going to ask, and that's understandable, but it does tend to restrict the conversation a little. If you really want to hear the voice of the patient, then you need to give them a bit more freedom. It's more of a conversation than an interrogation. And that's where we've tried to push the boundaries as much as we can, to give people the freedom to take you in areas that you might not have known were important in the first place, never planned to have a question about that. But that's where the gold dust can lie, that's where innovation can lie. So I think we need the freedom to go down those areas and see what we can find.
Some of the challenges of patient centricity is that contacting patients directly is illegal in many countries. Therefore, getting first-hand information can sometimes prove challenging.
In some countries you can market to patients directly via the TV or the radio, so you could do a TV ad, a radio ad, you could do a magazine ad that directly impacts upon the patient and gets them to talk to their healthcare professional about the right type of device for them.
It's very difficult for the pharmaceutical industry outside of the US to communicate directly with patients. In fact, it's not just difficult, it's illegal. So in the US, you obviously have direct-to-consumer advertising, where you have the adverts on TV, they have social media platforms and all sorts of ways of talking to patients. In Europe, that's not possible. So the only way a pharmaceutical company in Europe and beyond can actually talk directly to patients is via the healthcare professional. I think that whenever you're thinking about a patient-centric approach, you need to ensure that you don't ignore the healthcare professional. He's a very critical part in the chain between a drug company and between a patient taking a drug. So while it's important to be patient-centric, firstly, it's very difficult because you can't communicate with the patient, but secondly, you can't annoy the people that are actually prescribing the drugs in the first place.
I think the other area where we have to develop our offer is to not just uncover the voice of the patient, but to interpret it and to visualize it, or at least to convey it in a way that's compelling to healthcare professionals, to pharmaceutical companies, to charities and other organisations. So quite a wide spread of people that ultimately can help deliver and improve the lives of patients. So it's our job to bring that to life in whatever way makes it compelling.
Another challenge is that some populations of patients are susceptible over the use of technology, and some fear about their security online. Some elderly patients may also worry about using electronic devices in case the batteries run out and they're not able to continue using their device.
It's become more patient-centric as medical device manufacturers and pharma companies have realised the increasingly important role that patients play in decision-making. So over the last 5 years, the internet has played a massive part in providing more information to patients. Patients are much more clued up, they understand their disease, their condition a lot more, they understand what's out there in terms of devices, and they are playing a part in terms of going to their healthcare professional and saying, actually, I know this is on the market, this is what I think I should be using.
I think there's some hesitation amongst some patient populations around it. There's a fear that what happens if their phone battery dies? What happens if their data is being transferred across? But I feel that as technology moves on and people become more intertwined, or it becomes more intertwined in their lifestyle, that actually people are becoming more open to it. At the moment, you have a bit of a transition where it's very, very rare for a medical device to be fully integrated with a smartphone. There tends to be another option available to people. But I think it is becoming more widespread, it's becoming more acceptable for patients.
As we see devices increasingly talking to each other, particularly within a hospital setting, it's going to allow healthcare professionals to have a complete holistic overview of a patient's treatment journey, which is going to allow them to make better informed decisions. It's going to improve the healthcare that patients are receiving.
The advent of the internet gave its way to the birth of internet social groups and patient-specific websites where patients can discuss their experiences and seek answers to their questions. New technology also helps to cut the cost of innovations. For the pharmacists in particular, it can help to keep the drugs at required temperatures so the stock doesn't go off.
Yeah, there are a number of channels to communicate with patients. Traditionally, pharmaceutical companies have been communicating with patients through patient advocacy groups, In the United States, obviously, there is a direct to consumer advertising, but in various European countries, it's not allowed. But with the advent of social media, with the advent of internet, it's very easy to communicate directly with patients. There are patient-specific websites, portals, there are obviously social media outlets which patients can access directly.
Our job is to find ways to uncover the voice of the patient. And we're always looking for new places where we can hear that voice. And traditionally that has been finding certain patients with certain conditions and interviewing them and so on. But in the more modern world, and certainly in the world of digital channels and social media, the ability of patients to express themselves is so much greater, and to be able to influence others and others to read their comments. So we are having to move in that space, which is a much more unstructured world than the research that we used to conduct.
Innovative technologies definitely have the potential to reduce the cost of delivery and improve the services. The number of examples which can come to mind in terms of is delivery of pharmaceutical products or delivery of devices which can be monitored. For example, if you're transporting a drug which requires a cold chain supply, with the new innovative technology you can track the temperature through the whole of the transport, that particular product has been at the right temperature until it's delivered to the patient.
Where healthcare is trying to improve adherence to the taking of medicines and treatments, there can be nothing better than to improve the understanding of why people do or don't take treatments, than to really hear the life experience of what it's like to manage a condition through the day, 24/7. That brings richness that is often lost in the advice that you can put on a label or a patient information leaflet. We need to capture that and pass that information through as real learning material rather than simply sort of a noise.
Pharmaceutical companies make their products more accessible mainly through patient access programs and patient support programs. Patient support programs are the one which help patients access the drug or know more about the drugs or talk about the convenience, safety and efficacy of the drugs to the patients, whereas the patient access programs help patients access the products.
Well, one of the most innovative things that we've done in research in recent years is working on retrospective patient research. So what I mean by that is working with patients to take us back years, even decades, to when they first were diagnosed with a condition, and looking at all of the things that they have learned, the tips, the tricks, the traps that they've fallen into over that time, to help for a number of benefits. One is, I think, to help new patients just starting out on the road with that condition, so that they can have the benefit of that learning without having to travel all of those years. But it also has real practical benefits for the healthcare system. Those learnings can then help keep people out of hospital. They can self-manage better. That in turn reduces the cost that the NHS bears, and they can lean upon some of the unsung heroes in healthcare like pharmacists and use that relationship to support them to reduce costs in other parts of the NHS. So there really is a raft of benefits that we can gain from working with patients to look back and bring that richness of learning forward to other patients.
Widely distributed solutions are those which can be incorporated into everyday technological appliances, such as mobile phones. Some solutions opened up the possibilities for personal ethnography. They provide patients with affordable digital cameras so they can take photographs and create journals of their everyday therapy. This can inform researchers about the patient's well-being, feelings and emotions. Hence, the outcome will inform the medical researchers regarding the usability of future products.
So we've been seeing quite a lot of the integration of medical devices into, I guess, consumer products. So having apps or different ways of monitoring it using someone's smartphone, and then having the connectivity from that. So not only being able to look at it, but being able to send data to their HCP or send data to their home computer. I think it's all about having this patient centricity It's kind of empowering them to take control of their therapy, take control of their condition, using things which they use in their everyday life. And I think that really improves patients' quality of life. They don't feel like a patient anymore. They just feel like a person who happens to have a condition and happens to have to use a therapy every day.
One of the key innovations that we're seeing is around connected health. So it's devices talking to other devices, it's devices talking to non-medical related devices such as smartphones. It enables patients to better manage their own care. They've got a complete overview of what's going on with their therapy regimen. It allows them to share data very easily with loved ones or with healthcare professionals. And that's firstly driving efficiency within the healthcare sector, but it's also giving patients more control, allowing them to make their own decisions.
I think the nicest one for me is the affordability and the use of small recording devices. So whether that's a smartphone or very small inexpensive cameras such as a Polaroid Cube is really great, has opened up ethnography. So traditionally, ethnography, kind of observational research, has required a moderator to go to someone's house or go to their place of work and observe them in their natural environment. Whether this is for half a day, maybe in a longer period of time. But of course, the longer you have a moderator there, the more expensive it becomes. And also the more intrusive. You're not necessarily capturing the patient at every point during their day. You know, you're not with them at 10, 11 o'clock at night when they're going to bed and maybe they have concerns about how they're going to manage their therapy at a business conference the next day, for example.
Manufacturers are realising that actually it's really important to see what's going on in a patient's everyday life, understanding the environment in which they're in on a day-to-day basis, how their therapy regimen fits in with that.
You can send out these cameras to all over the world pretty much, and with the support of research agency to help them set it up so they've got the right angle, they know what lighting they're going to have, and you can leave it with people. Ask them to create video diaries every day, to talk about how they're feeling, perhaps give them trigger points. So every time you have to deliver your therapy, talk us through it, video yourself doing it, talk about what's been a problem today, what barriers you're experiencing, how you're feeling, and really capturing those kind of in the moment insights that you don't really get with other forms of market research.
There are reasons why patients should play an important role in the development and betterment of healthcare. As the companies monetize on their solutions, patients invest their well-being in helping to pioneer these innovations.
So I think the starting point needs to be that patient and clinician needs to come into the relationship on equal terms if we're really going to collaborate. So the clinician is expert in the conditions that they've been trained in, and the patient is expert in their own lives. And that becomes genuinely a learn and share environment rather than a sort of parent-child relationship.
Trials should be made and can be made more approachable to the patients, because patients are the ones who are investing in the trials with their bodies. So patients' convenience, patients' needs should be taken into account. When designing a particular trial, the company should think about the number of visits, number of tests, number of withdrawals of blood samples required. It's very important that you're inconveniencing the patients as little as possible.
So in order to produce a truly innovative, novel, or even groundbreaking and life-changing medical device, it's key that you include patient voice, you tap into patient perspective. It's only through that you'll ultimately produce a groundbreaking medical device.
Just by sharing patient stories with the society and the communities they live in gives the wider world a better appreciation of their lives with that condition and the value that helping to impact that can make.
I don't think it's realistic. It's probably too ambitious to say we can make a difference to everybody's lives. It's small changes that make a difference, and focusing and targeting what you want to do is probably the right way to go about it.
All development should be, and it will be, patient-centric in near future. It might take longer than we expect, but we definitely think that within 5 to 10 years, most of the drug development would be patient-centric.
There's no point just showing a picture of a product and hoping that people will understand how that's going to fit into their lives. You need to put it in their hands. It's something that, particularly for patients, they're going to be using sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It needs to be something which isn't too burdensome for them, they find it easy to use, and with all of that, it then promotes their therapy compliance.